All right, we're back. It is COMP1073. That's client-side scripting at Georgian College. And we are in the winter 2017 semester, week 3, part 1 of our broadcast. And I want to talk about a couple things. One, assignment 1, right? I'm going to bring this up again, is due next week, right? Tuesday, January 31st. That's the day before we meet, right? That's when assignment 1 is due. It's worth 15% of your final mark, and I'm guessing no one has started, right? That's crazy, man. You started? That's good. If you haven't started, I'm going to pay you to start today. I've got a bit of a, just putting it out there, I've got a bit of a lab that I put up. It's a lab 1, which is an assignment 1 checkpoint. That's what it is. It's due today at the end of the day. And what I want from you is your GitHub link. You can't have a GitHub link that's empty. Okay, so please don't give me an empty link, an empty connection. That's not what I'm looking for. I need a link to your project files, right? That's what is going to go there. And the second part is a zip archive of your project files that include your main page, right, that I asked for, the main landing page, if you will, and your navigation, all right? So I want those two things. And in order for you to have a navigation, you have to kind of structure your project. Now, if you followed last 2 weeks' videos, you have an idea of how to start. All right, now you can add to it, make it pretty and all that kind of stuff. Your main page obviously is going to have some kind of CSS, right? So really what I'm looking for when I say main page and navigation means your project structure, all right? Your initial project structure. If I just put project structure in there, you wouldn't know maybe what I wanted. So I want at least the main page working with your navigation tonight before midnight, right? Does it have to be pretty? No. Does it have to be your final version? No, because this is just the start of what I'm looking for. If you don't get this started, then next week will be a disaster and no one will have their stuff done. All right, so please, if you haven't had a chance to start, I'm paying you a 2% bonus to get going. If we have time today, I'll try and give you a little bit of time in class to get it done. Although I have, like as always, tons and tons of stuff to talk about. So that's what's happening, yes?
Sorry, I have a question about assignment 1. You said in the thing that you want our like CSS and JavaScript to be like within the proper folder.
Yeah.
Is the way we did it in class where we put in the scripts library or
yeah. Okay, let's go back. So I see what you're saying. So you're talking about, I'm going to just go into our last week's lesson, right? Before we get into this one. So you're saying, so here's lesson 2, right? I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code for a second, right? And if I drag and drop lesson 2 in here, by the way, I'll make lesson 3 from lesson 2. That's what I will do. So we'll make it a little faster this today. And notice how I have my assets. And underneath my assets, I would have any kind of images. That's where it would be. Content, I have my app.css. And of course, you'd have your own custom CSS that's much more than this, right? Or whatever else you need. And then in your scripts, now there's 2 things. Your app.js, your main app is going to be in your app.js. And then in your lib folder, you're going to have any libraries you downloaded. All right? So if you follow this process, if you actually take my project structure from last week and you build on it, I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be brand new from scratch, your own project structure. In fact, I encourage you to do that. Take my project structure and expand on it, make it more of your own. There's a lot in here that we did last week. For example, look, I've got some navigation in here, right? So you can almost take this basic navigation from the basics and add some stuff that I'm looking for in your app, right? Now, please don't give back to me this. This is not your main page. Your main page has to have stuff that is covered for you. So let's take a look. Is your contact page your main page? No. Is your projects page your main page? Probably not. It's probably this page, your bio page, which means you need to include a personal logo, which is a recent image of you, a short paragraph that outlines your personal mission. Who are you? What do you want to do? And everything should come from JavaScript. And we're going to talk about that today. That's why I'll probably give you a little bit of time in class to start this off today. How do I get stuff from my variables in JavaScript, and how do I put it into my page? I'll talk about all that. I'll give you the solution for that today. So your navigation is not going to work today. I don't expect your navigation to go to your contact page and your projects page. because you may not have those pages ready today. It's okay. The only thing I want you to do is start. I want you to talk about those things. So, and I had a question last week about images. Do I have to make it a real image of me? You know, whatever. Yeah, make it an image of you, right? You know, make it something that's more professional as long as it kind of has you in the picture. I know I've seen pictures of people who are like jumping, you know, they're doing some kind of activity, and it's about them. It's just them. They kind of cropped out themselves, and you know, they're kind of, maybe they jumped in a cliff or something. I don't know what they did. And the background, they put like a school, so it looks like they're jumping off the school. Like, I don't know what they did, right? They did all kinds of stuff. Or in the background they have a computer screen. You know, like they've done a bunch of stuff like that where they kind of Photoshop some images. That's neat. Make it interesting, right? Some people just crop themselves out of the picture and the whole background is black. That's kind of cool too. So all you see is a black background, maybe a gradient black background, something that makes it more unique or whatever. It doesn't have to be, you know, the next greatest mini portfolio front page. Doesn't have to be yet. You have some time to do that. These pages, there's only 3 pages that I'm asking for this thing. You know, the smart thing would be to scaffold all those 3 pages out today, and then with nothing in them, and then kind of submit that so you have a structure to hang your stuff, your content, right? I don't recommend waiting until next Sunday, right, to start your project, or next weekend, right? The weekend coming up. Don't wait till the weekend to start, because there's just not enough time. There's too much detail. That's the problem with this thing, right? So you need to start today, right? And that's why I'm giving you an incentive, 2% of your final mark. That means like final mark, 2%. If you get it done, it's a free 2% if you start your project, your assignment 1, right? And that means if you do everything right that I've asked. About the final marks and how everything is calculated. When I say bonus, this is like on top. This isn't calculated within your other assignments and your midterm and whatever. So if, let's say, for example, after everything you do, your final mark before your bonuses is like 80, and your mark would be 82, right? Nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't take a lot for you to get those 2%. Those 2% can be really hard to work for in a test, I'll tell you right now, or in an assignment, like really hard. So when I give you 2%, take it and run, right? And I'm doing it this first assignment because I want you to get you into the habit of starting early. This is actually late today, right? Right? You should have already started your assignment last week, at least, or hit it on the weekend or something, right? Because right now, you've got less than 7 days to get it done. That's 7 days to get a website done. That's not enough time. I'm just putting it out there. And if you guys start like that now in this class, by the time we get to assignment 3 or 4 or whatever, how many assignments we're going to do, I have to tell you, it's going to be a negative, right? It's going to come and bite you, and I don't want that to happen. So please start your assignment 1 tonight. Yes?
I made private repository on GitHub, so I do need to.
You'd have to collaborate with me to see it.
So is it charging for?
No, just let my last name. If you look at my last name on up on GitHub, you'll see me. That's the one you want to use. I have 2 accounts. One that has my first name and last name. The other one has my last name. Either one is okay, right? But my last name, you should probably just go with my last name because that's the generic one that I use for everything else. Okay. All right. So does that answer your question about what I'm looking for you know, for your pages and stuff? Okay. So again, just to start off today, I'm going to be talking about other things. We're going to start talking about storing data, so variables and all that kind of stuff. If we can't store data, then I can't present it on the screen, right? So that's the main thing we're going to be talking about today. That's all we're going to be talking about today. And I want to do more JavaScript with you than last week. So we're going to do a couple things. Here's my old project. Remember what we did last week? I want to make a new one. So I want to go COMP1073 lesson 3. So I'm going to duplicate this. If you're a Windows user, you can copy paste, and it'll create a. Oops, I meant to do duplicate. If you're a Windows user, just create a copy like this, right? It doesn't really matter. It's very similar to this. I'm going to call it lesson 3. And on the Mac, I'm going to go here and notice I can't see any hidden .git file. What I want to do here is I want to go into terminal in the beginning, and I want to CD there. So CD, this works the same on Windows. And I kind of go in there and press enter. So now I'm in my project files. Notice that I have master. If you see master like this in Windows, and by the way, I recommend Git shell on Windows to have proper, you know, to get better access from a terminal window perspective or command prompt. And I'll show you that in a second. So here, what I want to do is if I do an ls on the Mac, I don't see anything. But if I do an ls minus al on the Mac, I see this .git folder. And this is the .git folder from last week. So that means it's pointing to my previous repository online. I don't want that. I want to make a brand new repository, so which means I got to kill this one. So I'm going to do a remove. That's the command on the Mac, right? Minus rf for remove with force, right? Recursively, and .git, which is going to get rid of it. So now if you look, if I do ls minus al, I can see that there is no .git folder. Remember that the .git folder, whether it's Windows or Mac, both work the same way, is the hidden folder where we put our repository, our local files, our a snapshot, our commit. All of our commits are stored there, right? On the Windows side, let's go to the Windows side and kill fireworks. I'll come back to fireworks in a bit. On the Windows side, and if I pull up my VMware for a second, so we'll pull up Windows for those people, Windows users. And I know some people are going to say, Tom, you know, why do you do both Windows and Mac? You know, why do you kind of talk about Windows and Mac all the time? Some people just say, just talk Windows, because, you know, we're Windows people here, right? Well, not necessarily. I mean, I see a lot of Mac users on this side of the house, on the web side. So I got to handle both. So you need to be patient, because I'm showing you how to do it on both sides of the house, both Windows and Mac. I'm just going to close off Visual Studio. This is a project I was working on for another class. Let's close this one down. Actually, this is the project from our rapid application class on Monday. So here's Git shell. This is what I was talking about, right? And last week, I mean, you know, I want to have the same structure. So again, my folder is COMP1073 on the Mac side, right? And I'm looking for it if I have it here on the PC side. I don't think so. And that's perfectly acceptable. I can make a folder or drag and drop one from the other side. Let's just do that now. So I'm going to kind of go over here, and I'll grab this whole folder. I'm going to copy it, right? And I got kind of go over here and paste it, right? So it's going to paste everything, even my new lesson, but I'll make it again so I can show you what it looks like, right? So we're on the PC side, and once the folder is available to me, which will be right now, there it is. I'm going to get rid of this one so you don't have to see this one anymore, and I'll make a new one. So on the Mac, we did it one way. Notice I also have this hidden ds store file. That comes from the Mac. Whenever you see .ds_store, that's a Mac thing. So I want to copy this. I'm Windows side now, so I'm copying this, and I want to paste it back in, same folder. It's going to make a duplicate of this thing in a separate folder called copy, right? There it is. There's lesson 2 copy. I want to rename this thing in Windows to lesson 3. This is exactly what I've done on the Mac. I'm just doing it slightly differently on Windows. Now on Windows, if I double click, I see the .git folder here, right? I got to get rid of this. I'm starting a new repository. And the reason why I'm seeing this is because under View, like I said last week, I went to Options, and I've enabled myself to see. These are my checked options. I'm displaying the full path. I'm showing my hidden files, folders, and drives, and I'm also hiding. I've unchecked hide protected operating system files recommended, and I've unchecked hide extensions for no file types, so that way I can see what I'm seeing here, which is .git. If you don't see this, that means you haven't opened up your folders to be able to see this, and that's the problem. All right, so now what I'm going to do is delete it. So I'm going to right-click here and delete. Right, so I'm deleting this one. It goes away. And that means when I drag and drop it into Git shell, here's Git shell. For a second, one day when it comes up, here it is. And Git shell is kind of neat because on Windows, for my SSH, what is it? That's new. That I have never seen before. I'm just going to press enter for now. Woo, that's weird. I shouldn't have to do that, ID RSA. And that's weird because that means I shouldn't be able to do this, yeah? Okay. But Git shell is the one I'm using, right? And Git shell gives me the same, almost exact same commands. But what I want to do here is I want to transport myself or find myself into the same folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go CD space, and then I'm just going to drag and drop this on Windows and kind of go in there, right? So I'm going to go, I'm navigating through the directory structure to Windows. And if I do a directory now, this is what I have in there, assets, content, script, and so, but I don't have a .git folder. In Windows, I need to do the same thing I'm gonna do the Mac, git init, that's my command, right? Notice I have some information coming back at me saying I have 5 files that I need to commit that I have not been, I don't have a commit for. This is git bat or git shell. On the Mac, I want to do the same thing, right? I want to create I want to initialize my Git repository. It's going to be git init. So all I get here is master with a star if you're a Mac person, right? Now I'm not using the standard terminal on Mac. I'm using something called ZSH, which I recommend for Mac users, right? Or iTerm. Okay, so again, for Mac users, if you want to have your stuff look like mine, please look up iTerm. It's a better terminal for Mac OS, right? Which is much better. It's also free, right? And it gives you what we call ZSH, right? So take a look at iTerm if you're interested in kind of coloring your terminal and making it look like mine. But if you don't care, it looks like this right now. And if I do an ls-al, you can see that it's now created the .git folder back again, right? All right, so I've done git init. Now I'm going to go from the Mac. I'm going to go git add dot, right, on the Mac. On Windows machine, and just to make this a little bit easier, I'm just going to rearrange some of these windows so I can switch between the two. On my Windows machine, right, here's my Windows machine. So here's Mac, here's Windows. On Windows machine, I'll do the same thing. I'll clear the screen, and I'll say git add dot. Now it's going to add all this stuff. Same thing on both sides. Now, so notice that there are 287 files that I've added in here, right? So if I do a clear screen, 287 files that I've added in. I just did git add dot, right? So again, Mac, Windows, we've done 2 things: git init and git add space dot. Git add space dot. It looks like this. Okay, that's what it looks like. Okay. And if you don't know what the commands are, you can always go through them by using the arrow keys on your computer, right? On the terminal, you can always go up and down on the arrow keys, and you can see previous commands. Okay. All right, so git add dot. Now the third command I need is what? I did git init, git add dot. What's the third thing I need? Git commit, right? So I'm going to do it here on the Windows machine. Git commit minus M for message, and then it's either initial commit, right, or first commit. Either one is correct. So here it is. I'm going to press this and press enter. Press all that. If you haven't seen it, if it was too fast, I'm going to do the same thing here. Git commit minus M, and then initial commit on the Mac. Press enter. You see the same thing. Okay? So far I'm just doing it in parallel. Both things are exactly the same. There's no difference, right? There's going to be a place where I have to stop, and I'll tell you why. Because I can't point the same my 2 projects that have different commits to the same repository on GitHub. Right? Only one of them can point. The other one can't because it's a different set of commits. Remember, each commit is unique, right? Even though I'm doing the exact same commits on both sides, it's the exact same project, but it's 2 different platforms. One's Windows, one's Mac. The hash, the number for the commit is totally going to be different, and that means I cannot merge those commits online on GitHub. It won't work, is what I'm saying. All right, so I'm going to do it on the Mac side. So first of all, I need to create a remote. And for the remote, I need some kind of GitHub link. So I'm going to go to GitHub. I'm going to go to Georgian, and I have some stuff that I did last week in lesson 2 and lesson 3. This week I need to do a COMP1073 lesson 3, so let's do that. So new, and I'm going to go here and set up a repo, COMP1073, winter 2017, lesson 3. Right, that's what it is. That's where we are today. Right, and if you notice, again, if I'm going a little bit too fast for you, remember you can always look at the videos again. These last 2 lines are the ones I need, right? This time, what I'm going to do is, again, copy paste them. So I'm going to copy paste these 2 lines. Now I can do it on the Windows side. There's the Windows side. I can do it here, right? And then as soon as I push, we're done. I'm not going to push though on the Windows side, so I'm just not going to do this one. But on the Windows side, it's the exact same. It's the exact same on the Mac, right? So here I've actually, if I go clear the screen, when I copied it, if I go git remote, it actually lists my remote, and my remote is called origin, right? Let's try that again on the Mac side. So I'm going to kind of paste on the Mac side. So there it is, pasted on the Mac side. This time I am going to push and press enter again, and it's going to do my final push. Right? So when I push, it's going to push everything to the to GitHub. And if I take a look at if I'm going to clear my screen again, and if I go get remote, you can see that remote is the exact same. Origin is the same, is the name of the remote. That's what it's called, okay? But I've pushed from my Mac, not Windows, so I'm going to be working with a Mac for the remainder of the time. It's identical. The stuff we do on the Mac now at this point and Windows, when I'm working with Visual Studio Code, there's no difference, pretty much. Let's take a look at my Git repository and see what I got there. I'm going to refresh. And you can see now that I've got my content, my scripts, and I've got one commit. What I'm looking for you, for your assignment number 1, is more than one commit, right? If you put things up on GitHub for one time, you put it up there and say, here it is, that's not using Git properly. GitHub needs to be, it needs a little bit of TLC, right? A tender love and care. It means that kind of thing. And I'll tell you why. I need you to work with GitHub. You need to love GitHub. If you hate GitHub and you're a developer or a designer, you got to learn to live it or live with it and love it. Love it. I don't know what's a better way to say it. And if you don't, because this is going to save you sometimes. If your machine might blow up, something might happen, and you made a change, you don't know what happened. You want to go back. That's why we do this. So this, if you only have one commit, that's bad. That's just me putting it and using it as a backup, right? In order for you to get your full marks in your assignment, you need to work with GitHub. That means whenever I add a feature, I add a page, I change something, I debug something, those kind of things. I want to work with GitHub. I want to do more than one commit, more than one snapshot of my code. That's what I want to try and do over and over again. I'm going to show you how to do that today. All right, so we've got our lesson, and if I look at git log tells me I've got one commit. Notice that the hash, this is what I'm talking about, the hash. The hash is the commit message, or the number for the commit. My number is going to be different than yours, 100%. No one can really have the same number because it's based on a bunch of things. My computer, my operating system, the time that I did it, where it's going, what's the repository name, what's my local repository name. Those are things that are always going to be different from mine to yours. So therefore, those things are used to calculate or generate this number, and other things that Git uses that are proprietary to generate this number. And so because of that, it's never going to be the same. And so that's why I cannot use both my Mac and Windows to point to the same thing with different commits. I can do it now if I really wanted to download from GitHub on the Macs, on the Windows side, and then do one commit on Mac and one commit on Windows, and then pull and fetch and do all those kind of things. And we'll do that another day. I can do that, but it means first I got to do my application on one side, put it up on GitHub, and then pull it down into Windows so that it's the same commits, the same numbers, not different numbers that are generated. And I'll show you how to do that another day. All right, so that's git log. There's also a command called git status. So those are the 3 commands. Git remote shows me the remote. Git log shows me the log, how many commits I have. Git status shows me what's going on. Am I ready to go? If it says nothing to commit, working tree is clean, I'm good. That means I've committed everything. And you can tell because my master branch here on Windows doesn't have a little star next to it. Okay? On Mac. There's the other one I want to show you is git branch. All right? I'm on the master branch, right? The master branch is my code base. This is where all my code is sitting. I can have more than one branch if I want to. And a lot of times we do more than one branch when we want to do things like create another branch for every feature that I make. So maybe my main branch, I have my master branch, and then I have another branch called, I don't know, main page, right? And then I have another branch called contact page, and I have another branch called, and these other branches is where I added that feature. It's the name of the feature that I'm adding. We can do it that way. We can also do it a lot of times where the branch has a version number. For example, branch 0.1. That's the first .1. So it's almost like my pre-release version of my code, 0.1. I work on it, merge it back into the master branch, and then I make a new branch, 0.2, for my next feature. Work on that one, fix it, merge it back into the master branch, and then make another branch, 0.3. And I keep doing that over and over again until I progress my app with each release until it's version 1 or version whatever it's going to be for my initial release, my beta or my alpha release. we're not going to get there. I'm just explaining, how Git can work for you. And this is, just to understand how Git works. Again, a lot of this stuff that I've done, Git remote, points to the remote on the cloud. But all these commands, Git remote, Git log, Git status, Git branch, they all work locally. They have nothing to do, well, not directly. They don't have nothing directly to do with the remote, which is on GitHub. This is just Git. Your local computer has this information, not shared exactly on GitHub. And we're not connected to GitHub right now. Even though we made the remote and we push to GitHub, it's not always connected. It only connects when I need to connect. And that's why it's going to ask you sometimes for your username and password, because you're connecting, you're logging in and pushing all your files on GitHub. Okay? Whew, enough about GitHub. I know I keep talking about it every week, but I got to build on your knowledge because you need to be comfortable with GitHub. It's required. Okay, so the other thing we talked about was going live last week, and I need to do that this week because you need to, one of your requirements, if you look at your requirements for assignment number 1, right? Here's assignment number 1 requirements. Look at the bottom, and it tells you that from a GitHub perspective, right, you need that. That's 4 marks, right, for version control user property. And the other 4 marks is push your site to a cloud host or some other kind of host. Now, you might use something like, what's your cloud host of choice? What do you use for what is it? Microsoft Azure is okay. What else? What else is out there? We talked about this last week. Yes. Heroku, but Heroku has issues with just HTML because you need to kind of wrap it in some kind of Node or PHP application, right? And if you're not doing a PHP application, Heroku doesn't make sense. Just putting it out there, right? You may want to. How about DreamHost? Is that can you use that? That's free, right, for you guys too. So you can use DreamHost. You can use Azure. You can use other hosting, your own hosting service, whatever you want, as long as I have access to a live link. This has to be pushed live. All right. Let's push my site live. I'm going to use Microsoft Azure to push it live today, right now, right? And I'm going to show you how it works. So again, the assumption is, I'm making some assumptions today. The assumption is your Git is installed locally on your computer at this point, right? That you know how to use Visual Studio Code to some degree, right? And that you've logged in and signed up for Azure, Microsoft Azure. And again, I pointed to that last week. If you look at our Slack channel, and if I go to our Slack channel, which is this one, connection trouble. I love connection troubles. They're great. If you look at our Slack channel, and if you look at some of the stuff I put up here, here's our GitHub link, a first time Git setup, a Bootstrap link for Bootstrap, and a bunch of other stuff I may have put up here on the hub. This is on the hub right here. If you click on this software link on the hub, it's right here, right inside of our general channel on our Slack. If you look there, you can see that what it's going to point to is this, and you need to sign up for Microsoft Azure for Students on the left. And if you follow the instructions, and again, I recommend doing that with incognito mode or privacy mode turned on. When you do this, it will work. If you start switching between regular mode and privacy mode, sometimes what ends up happening is it detects your Georgian College email as a Microsoft email. It'll think that's the one you want to use. It'll be confused, and your sign-up process will be messed up. So stick to incognito mode, and you shouldn't have a problem. You'll see what I'm talking about when you get there, right? Sometimes you need to prove that you're a student. You may need to send some student information, like your tuition or some kind of transcript or whatever. They ask you for something. A lot of times it's just your Georgian College email. That's enough, okay? So please take a look at that if you haven't done. So let's assume that you have. Now I'm going to use Azure for the first time, and you need to go to portal.azure.com to do so. And you need to be logged in with your account. So now I'm logged in with my account. That's my local account, right? And I'm going to put that up on Slack for you. So to get to Azure, right? And I think I have that here. Let me see. Because I don't want to duplicate too much, right? Yeah. So here's your Azure link. Azure link, right? Is portal.azure.com, right? Portal.azure.com. And portal.azure.com, if you go there, it'll take you where I am right now. There it is. But now it logs me in automatically because it knows who I am. That's why I told you incognito mode. If I went to Azure, this is what it would look like. There's incognito. If I go to portal.azure.com, it doesn't know who I am, right? It's going to ask me to log in. which is what you should be getting. You should be getting a login screen if you see login screen. If you've signed up for Azure, this is what you'll see. Okay. Yay, fantastic. You've done all this. Now what I want to do is I want to go to new, right? So there's a little button that says new up here on the top left, right? I want to click on new. It's going to ask me, what do you want to build that's new, Tom? I want to build something called web and mobile. There's my web and mobile, something I want to build new, right? And here I want to build a web app. Okay, that's the next step. So I want to click on this new. I want to click web and mobile. I want to click web app, right? Under web app, it's going to say, okay, you need to enter a unique address for your web app. Now yours would be something like, please don't call it assignment 1. Please call it like, your name, .azurewebsites.net, something to make sure that it's your mini portfolio site. If you say it's Azure, assignment 1, everybody here has got assignment 1. It's going to clash. You're going to have trouble finding it. If you really want to use assignment 1 and the whole, COMP1073, you could do something like COMP1073, assignment 1 dash your student number. At least that's unique, right? But make it a unique address. So for me, I'm going to call it something not unique, COMP1073, winter 2017. Notice that's okay. Up to there, it's see that that's blank. I can't do that. And then it's today's lesson, which is lesson 3, right? And then if I get a check mark, I'm good. My subscriptions to say DreamSpark or Imagine. Those are the 2 subscriptions. If I use pay-as-you-go, I'm paying. I don't want to pay-as-you-go. I have a pay-as-you-go subscription, but I don't use it very often unless I have to. So now I'm using DreamSpark. Okay, cool. Next, I'm going to create or use a resource group. I already have a resource group. If you want to create one, you could certainly do that. You can go over here and allocate a new resource group and a resource plan. It doesn't take much. For example, if I have a service plan that's here, South Central US, I have another one that's Canada East. I want to make a new one. And what I want to do is name it. So let's call this Canada West. There's one, right? Let's say I don't have one. And by the way, if it's taken, I have to make it an actual name, Canada West. I have to select my region. This is important, right? Because this tells me where my server is. Do I have a Canada West server? No, I have a Canada Central. So I'll select Canada Central and change this to Canada Central. Okay. So what is this thing? What is this location and the app service and all this kind of stuff that I'm doing? The app service and location that I've created for where the data center for Microsoft physically lives. So if it's in the east, it's probably somewhere in Mississauga, like on Toronto, like near Toronto, right? If it's somewhere central, it's somewhere else, right? The farther we go, if I point to a server that's in Japan or someplace like that, it's going to be slower because it's farther away. I got to tunnel through 30 or 40 routers to get there. Who knows, right? What's the tunneling path? It goes through the cloud. We don't know where it goes, right? So you want to kind of pick the data center that's closest to where we are. And it's either, for us, it's Canada East or Canada Central, okay? You name it something. In this case, I've just named my own Canada Central for my web service, okay? That I can reuse, right? I also notice I have South Central US. You can do that too. US and Canada is okay. Anywhere outside the US and Canada, don't recommend, okay? Notice my pricing tier. My pricing tier is free. That's the pricing tier you want. If your pricing tier says pay as you go, it's going to cost you $15 a month. That's up to you, but that's not what we want. We want free, right? And press OK. This creates my plan, right? So I'm going to use existing. I can use my plan. So it's Canada East, East 2, Central US, Georgian College, my Canada. Canada Central is the one I want, right? This is the one I want to use now. I've created it. I want to pin to the dashboard. This is my dashboard for all of my websites that I'm making, right? I have a dashboard for Azure, okay? And then when I want to click Create. It's not that difficult. If you missed something, please see the video that'll be posted actually after this. All right, so I'm going to click this. It's going to validate everything. It's going to take me back to my dashboard. Here's my dashboard, right? Now I have some other ones. Like here's another one I made last semester, COMP1073. What about killing stuff that I have? I want to clean up some things. As an example, there's some things that I had from last time. I have a deployment failure, by the way. Notice I had a deployment failure, right? Here's a deployment failure. The reason why deployment can fail, and it happens sometimes, is if you're full. I'm full right now, full, right? I can only have access to certain apps, especially if I use databases. And the reason why I'm doing this, I've got this SQL database, and I also have this web app from last semester. So what you can do is here, you can go in here, and then I can kill the web app, right? So I can delete it. So this is the way to delete it. So just go up here into the web app for another course, and I can click delete, press yes, and what it's going to do is going to delete the web app completely, which is going to free up some space. And then I can do this whole mess again, right? Because if I go in here, it's going to see, look, failed in Canada Central. There's some events that are related, and it says something like error, fails, probably something happened, right? And there's a reason for it. It's because it says Microsoft Resources, right? Microsoft Resources deployment right. You can see the problem that it has, just in case you get this error, right? I can't deploy because I'm full. That's what it is. That's what it's telling me, right? If I read through it, I'm not going to do that. Let's go back to my dashboard. So I'm going to go back to dashboard, and I can delete this. It never happened, basically. Okay, let's keep on deleting. So this one's gone. I got a couple of databases. These things take up room too. For now, I'm going to leave them. But this one, this lesson from last semester, I want to kill that one too. So I'm going to kind of go up there and go delete. Again, these ones take up more space, so you want to be very careful of what you have up here. And you certainly want to delete stuff that you're not using, right? So this kind of promotes an issue for you guys, right? What if you get full and you have to deploy something on Azure? You don't have a lot of room, right? That's a problem. All right, so I got two databases. That's taking up some room too. We're going to get rid of these later. But for now, let's make that new resource again. So you'll see one more time. Let's try one more time. So here's another one, right? New. Now, I got to tell you, there's going to be an issue, right? Here's my web app. Can I use the same name now? It didn't deploy. Can I use the same name that I chose afterwards? What do you think? Maybe not. Let's try it. So if I go COMP1073, huh? Nah, you think that's the truth, but actually, if I go to Winter 2017 and I go lesson 3, oh, right? Doesn't exist, but I made it. So what happens is sometimes it's being used. Now I made it. It failed. Too bad for you. So I'm just going to call this 3A. That's fine too, right? And I'm going to just choose an existing group, which I'm going to use Canada Central. This is the Canada Central group. Notice it kind of changes it to Canada Central, right? And I'm going to click Pin to Dashboard. I'm not going to choose anything else. Still DreamSpark, blah, blah, and click Create. Now, this time, if I go well, it submits my deployment. You got to watch it over here, right? And if it's full again, I'm going to go and delete some of these other things because I need to make some room. Remember, Microsoft Azure gives you some room. It's free, right? So, don't expect things to be free forever, right? And it's also not unlimited. I think they give you something like 50 megabytes total, right? Notice how it succeeded, right? Because I made room. I kind of got rid of some other ones, made this one. Why am I telling you this? Because for your projects for class, if you put them all up on Azure, you may run out of space, right? So we need to let me know. If it fails, if somehow your Azure link fails because you run out of space, that's bad, right? So please be careful. All right, number one. So that's the first thing I've done. Now, is there anything up here? If I go to this app, if I go and see, if I want to see what this thing is, this is my link, COMP1073. Is there anything going to be there right now? Let's take a look. Right, it's going to look like this, right? What's this? This just says the web app has been created, but it's empty. It's empty. It's just a container. I've created a container on the cloud somewhere. That's all I'm doing, right? So in order for me to connect to it and send my files there, what do I want to do? I want to use GitHub. I'm not going to use FTP. FTP, we don't use that as much anymore. Yes, can I do it? I can with Azure. Should I do it? I don't want to. I want to use continuous deployment through Microsoft Azure, right? And I can link to GitHub because I have a Git repository. So now to do that, on the left, right? Notice there's two panes here. And if I go back to my dashboard, so my dashboard, here's my lesson, right? If I click onto it, it'll take you here in the beginning, right? There'll be two parts. There'll be this pane here and this pane. This is the pane for some of the details. And on the left, it's the pane for other things you can do. Notice if I scroll down a little bit, I have this area called App Deployment. App Deployment. What I want to click here is I want to click on Deployment Options, right? And then it's going to ask me to configure some stuff, right? What do I have to configure? My connection to Git. So I'm going to choose GitHub, right? Yeah, I've configured GitHub, but now it's going to ask me for some other stuff. Hey, Tom, where do you want it to go? Do you want it to go to your personal Tom account, or do you want it to go to Georgian College? I think I need to go to Georgian College, yeah? Because that's where my GitHub is for this one. So I'm going to click here. It's going to give me some options. I want to choose Georgian College, right? Great. And now from a project, it tells me which project do I want. This is the repository up on GitHub. I'm going to choose my project, and notice it comes up, right? COMP1073, winter 2017, lesson 3. That's the one, and it usually goes last in, first out. So that means at the top is the latest project that I put up on that organization, right? So notice this is not last week's project. This is this week's project, this one. So I've chosen my project, and then I can choose my branch. If I have more than one branch, I talked about branches, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, or I don't know, my home page, my contact page. You know, I can make my branches, I can call them different things when I do development. For now, I'm only working off of my master branch, so I can leave that alone. And my performance testing, I can leave unconfigured. I don't want to performance test anything. It's not required for this course, right? And I'm going to click OK. What it's going to do is it's going to connect with GitHub, grab all the GitHub files, and pull them into the Azure container that I've made up online. That's what it's going to do right now, okay? So I'm going to take these files and put them into Azure. And when it does this, when it creates my connection, right? Don't think it's done until it's done. Until you get a check mark that you're going to see right here, I don't want you to assume that everything is fine, all right? Because sometimes if your files are very large, like you put huge pictures, I remember I talked about running out of room, it might create your container, but then your files are too large and then it won't deploy from GitHub. It's too much to send to Azure because you've gone over your quota, right? So now I can't tell. It doesn't say anything. Nothing happens here. It's not telling me, hey, you're done, right? How do I check? Deployment options. I'm clicking on it again. And if I wait, I want to see this check mark. If I see this check mark, chances are, and it's going to have the same name as my commit, initial commit. Chances are, if I do something, right? That means I should be able to see my site now. This site, COMP1073, blah, blah, blah. I should be able to go there. Let's see how that works. So again, I'm going to go back to the dashboard. Click on my link here for my site. It should give me a link on the right, COMP1073-W2017-lesson3a.azurewebsites.net. Click onto it. And now, my friends, if everything went well, you should be able to get to it here. Please go and check it out. It's live across the world. Go ahead. Go check if you don't believe me, right? So you should have access to this too, right? Now, here's the great thing about this. Because I've connected it to GitHub, any time that I change anything on GitHub or I do a commit, automatically updates my site on Azure because Azure is consistently and constantly watching for a change. Yes?
Is there a way to configure everything so that when I make console, it automatically pushes to GitHub?
No, because you have to put a commit message. You have to specify which files are you're committing. There is no way. I like your thinking, but no, it doesn't work that way. It would be nice if we could just click a button and push to GitHub. But the problem with it is it would have to make a commit message. You'd have to still need some kind of unique commit message. Otherwise, your messages would all be the same. Next push, next push, next push, next push, the next one, the next commit, the next commit. It has to be something, or commit 1, commit 2, commit 3. They don't mean anything. Your commit messages should mean something. Here's what I added. Here's what I changed. Here's what I fixed, right? Those kind of things. So there is no quick way. All right, so this is a site that works up on GitHub and works up now on Azure. And you can see that I've got my home, my projects, which doesn't have a link. See how it says, hey, you're looking for something that is not there, because I don't have a projects page and I don't have a contact me page. I just did exactly what I'm looking for from you, right? I put up a first page and that's all I have, right? I link to GitHub and I have a link to Azure. That's all. I'm not asking for your link to your cloud provider tonight, all right? However, I recommend whoever it's going to be, whether it's Streamhost, some local server that you're using in town and in Barrie somewhere, where you buy space for $5 a month. Sometimes like $5 a month, you can find like hosting, right? Really, really cheap. Or whether you do it with Azure or Dream, or whoever you do it with, I want that information next week when you do your assignment number 1 submission, right, on Blackboard. I need 3 things from you, right? I need your GitHub link. I need a link to your site live, wherever it's going to be. And the third thing I need is all your project files zipped up, right, up on Blackboard. Those 3 things I need, right? Also, if you want to put any notes, like, by the way, Tom, I added this and these things that I wanted to make. These are special extras that I added in. Take a look. I might give you bonus marks, right? If I see something that's really neat that I like that you put in there. Sometimes you put something neat, but it doesn't work or it doesn't make any sense. You might not get too many marks or maybe anything, but you're not going to lose something for putting something and saying, give me some information, like saying, hey, Tom, take a look at this, right? Because I may not see it. I'm looking at 30, mini portfolio sites, and I'm going to go from one to the other. I want to give you guys some good feedback, but I might miss something. It's possible, right? So please let me know if you added something unique. So questions about putting your stuff up on Microsoft Azure. That's what this is, Microsoft Azure, right? Again, let me show you what I'm talking about when I say it's going to automatically update, right? By the way, I put this link for you guys for people who are watching remotely on Slack. So here's an example, Azure link for lesson 3. So if you can't get to it, you couldn't see it. It's too far away from you to see. It's this one. Oh, yeah, that's the one. If you actually go there, if you click on that link, it'll take you to the site I just made, right? And let's update it. Let's change a couple things, right? Just to see, so to show you that it's different. So if I look at up there right now, you can see that it says lesson 2. That's wrong. It should say lesson 3, yeah? So let's change this to lesson 3. So it says lesson 3. That's the first thing I'll change. So I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio. Here it is, right? And if I look at my index.html, right, I see that it says lesson 2. I'm going to change this to lesson 3 as a header, right? My click me button, that's a click me button, right? That's one. And inside the top, there's an area that says my navbar brand where I said logo goes here. We're going to see, I'm going to call this my portfolio. Now you really should want to put some kind of logo image in there, but let's say I want to change a couple things. Okay, so I changed a couple things. Notice that on the left, now inside my Visual Studio Code has Git integration, right? So I can do it through command line if I want. I can go in here and do another git commit and git add dot and so on. Or I can do it right through Visual Studio Code, if you like Visual Studio Code. So when I click here on the Git integration, the Git tool, it shows me my change. Under where it says changes, I'm going to click the plus button right here. You asked me for a quick way. This is integrated into Visual Studio Code, right? So I've gone here. It shows me that there's something that's changed. It detects something that's changed. I'm going to go over here and click my plus for changes. So now this is what stage changes. I need to make a commit message. So the first thing I did was like git add dot. This is the second part, which is updated, project to show lesson 3, which is what I did, right? That's my commit message. Click the check mark. And now I want to push it to GitHub, and I don't want to use command line. I can go to my ellipses up here on the right, click it, and go push. And when I do that, everything is no commands to put in on command line. It just uses the Git integration. And if everything went well, if I go back to GitHub, here's GitHub, and if I refresh, I should have 2 commits now, right? If I did it properly, right? Do I have 2 commits yet? Oh man, what happened? Where did that thing go? Let's take, huh? I pushed it. Yeah, mine did not. Mine, something had a problem. It didn't go here for some reason. Let me take a look and see what happened. So let me try it out and see what happens here. So this is my remote. So I'll say git status, right? Git log. Yeah, it didn't go. Didn't even do a commit. That's really weird. Okay. Let's see what I committed to, what changes I made, and where did it go, right? Oh, arg. That's why it didn't work. And that's why I pulled down the wrong one. That's okay, I can fix that. I was looking at the wrong one. That's totally a mistake that I make sometimes because I'm using multiple folders that's almost the same name, right? So let me try this out again. So here's this one is what I want. Let's try that again. So I'll show you that again. I don't care about lesson 2. Let's try this out. So here's lesson 3 now, and I want to make a change. So I'm going to go to my index.html. change to 3, and I go up here to, that's one thing. In my title, it's got to change to, I forgot that. And down here inside my code, lesson 3, it's got to be in there. And also what I want to do is instead of my logo goes here, this is my mini portfolio site, my portfolio. So I changed. I've got 3 changes, right, locally. You notice on the left here, it'll come up. Once I change something, it'll detect it. It shows me my change. I modify it, I add it in, my stage commits, and in here I'll say updated project, for lesson 3, right? I'll click this check mark, and I'll click this ellipses, and I'll click push. And if I did everything correctly this time around, last time I did not, right? That's why I check all the time. If I did everything correctly, and if I refresh my code, I see 2 commits, right? Okay, because I did 2 commits, I have Azure watching, right? So here's Azure. It was lesson 2, right? I made a commit on GitHub. Let's see if it updated Azure yet. Yes, it did. And notice it says my portfolio now, right? That's how fast it is. It's like really quick. So I update GitHub and bam, Microsoft Azure, the live site is updated too. Okay? So really good tool. I mean, if you can get it working, I think the challenge with Microsoft Azure is, can I get it working? Once you get Microsoft Azure working, it runs like a clock. It's perfect, all right? It's really good. It's a solid service. Everything's great. It's just getting it working for the first time for students is a little tough, right? If you want to pay for it, it works like a clock. In fact, they'll send you information. If you want to pay me, they'll say, right? No problem. They'll take your money, right? But you don't have to. You're students. So please use the free version if you can get it. Worst case scenario, if you wanted to make some free sites, and if you use the lowest level, it would probably only cost you $5 a month, all right? It's not that expensive. Like if you want to use the low, with no database connection on the back end, and if you just use Microsoft Azure just for web apps, pay as you go. It's very cheap. It's not very expensive at all right? It's only when you go higher than that, when you do more stuff with Microsoft Azure, that's a problem. I'm going to give you one more option, which is really cool, and you have access to it already, right? It's called GitHub Pages, right? You can actually develop your website up on GitHub and send it to GitHub, and it tells you how to do it, right? So it's hosted directly from your GitHub repository, and it says just edit, push, and your changes are live, right? So how does this work? It kind of tells you how to set up your GitHub pages down here. If you follow the instructions, it'll actually tell you how to host your site live on GitHub, okay? So, again, I would follow the instructions if you want to. Now, I got to warn you that this is only for one page. You get one page in each organization you make, right? So, example, your organization right now is probably your last name or some combination of your first name and last name, because that's what you probably made, right? Mine, for example, is Stiliopoulos. That's my main organization. I've made others, Georgian College, other colleges, whatever that I work at as well. I made those organizations. You can make one as well, a unique one that says something like COMP1073 assignment 1, right? And you could host in that organization your pages for each of your assignments. You could, if you worked it, you can probably work it so you can have all your assignments hosted live on GitHub for free, right? Again, they're nothing that's crazy, and GitHub is fantastic. It's actually Amazon Web Services is what serves up GitHub. That's where it comes from. So we're kind of using Amazon here, and you can see the speed. It's good, and it's readily available and free, right? So if you really are interested, please follow up with GitHub. That's another option. Just to show you this, I'm going to put this up on Slack, just for those people who forgot. So here's Slack. So GitHub Pages, right? That's another one that you want to do. So host your site on GitHub. Yes? No. Account is one thing. An organization is a sub-account, right? Let me explain. So that's a good question. So if I go here to GitHub, right? Here's my GitHub. Notice that it says Georgian College first. So it says GitHub, then Georgian College, and da-da. But if I just do this, right, like this, guess where it goes? It goes to me, right? And if I look at my profile for a second, so I say my profile, and this is what yours looks like. You see my ugly picture, and then you see the number of repositories I have. See, I have all my repositories here. This is other repositories that I have that I do some other testing. I might, for other courses, for other things that I'm doing, I put some stuff up here. Like lately I had this repository for this OpenGL course that I'm doing right now, right? So I put that up here, right? As well as other things that I kind of work on. I have another one for Mazescape, which is a little game that I made recently, right? It's a 3-dimensional game, a 3D game with Unity. It's live. I think if you want to check it out, it's called mazescape.ca. Should be still working, right? Check it out. The live game that I made with Unity and C#, right? So if you want to check it out, and I kind of created the code. The code is up there for you guys to check out if you really want to. It's going to take a moment to download because I'm using the lowest level of Microsoft Azure to do it. It's pay as you go, right? Because I bought a domain name, mazescape.ca. I bought it, and it's pointing to a Unity game that I kind of put together. This was a labor of about, I don't know, say 4 or 5 hours. We kind of put this together, and it was just a little demo that we made for Unity. So it's nothing grand, but it's something we put together, me and a couple of other guys. We put it together so we could have this game. Now, it's a 3D game, right? You have a little mini map if you want to check it out. And as you walk, you can walk around with your WASD keys and actually fire stuff if you really want to. Okay, that's enough. But the point is that you can put whatever sites you want up on Azure. It's not grand, but it's something that we did with Unity and WebGL. So we actually made a WebGL-based site with Unity, put it up on Azure, and the Git repository is right on my local pages. So if you actually go to my repositories, you can actually see my code. It's all there. It's all open for you. There's actually something called Mazescape prototype and the actual Mazescape itself, which actually this is the one that probably goes right up onto the web, right? If you want to check it out. So it was a couple months ago we did it on November 25th. All right. So again, is it possible? Could you make your own stuff like this? Yes, you can. It's not outside of your capabilities, believe it or not. Even though you think maybe, wow, how did that happen? What did you do there? What was involved? It's not impossible. It doesn't take a lot of work. Again, it took us 4 or 5 hours to put something together like this together, but it's something that you can probably do as well. All right, so GitHub and Microsoft Azure. We also talked about GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages where you can host things for free. If you want to, you can also point your domain to GitHub Pages for free, and it gives you how to do it all in here. If you actually look through this and you actually search for it, you can see that the default is username.github.io, but you can always point your custom domain if you really want to this. Questions around Microsoft Azure and GitHub Pages? Anybody? Guys, I've been talking for about an hour now, and I think it's a great place to stop. We've talked about a couple things. I've talked about assignment number 1. It's due next week as a reminder. Lab 1, which is a checkpoint for assignment 1, which I'm paying you. I'm paying you to do 2% to start tonight, and I'll pay you 2% of your final mark to get you going, right? That's due tonight. And I've talked about a couple of hosting options, right? Both Microsoft Azure and GitHub Pages, all right? So let's take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we'll continue with JavaScript.